Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back down the rabbit hole. I'm in the studio in Bali. Today I'm joined by Emile Steenveld. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. Thanks
Good
for
to
having
have
me.
you in the studio. I've known about you for a while through mutual contacts. And I know you're doing great work, but we've never really had much to do with each other. But we met at a party recently and it was some really cool conversations going on there. So I'm really glad to connect and have you in the studio, man. Yeah, what's your story? What are you known for?
Well, thanks for having me, for starters. What I'm known for is emotional intelligence and transformational work. I like to go deep and go to the core of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And for me, it's because, man, growing up as a kid with parents that didn't know how to express in certain ways or communicate, we always go to teach what we don't know. And I was terrible with my emotions. I didn't know how to respond. I would react. My father was not the most expressive person. He would shut down, like, the typical, call it toxic masculine. But he didn't know. So why I do what I do is because I love to see people to be able to open up, express, and not have that restriction on who they are, and be unapologetic in the way they show up. And that to me is freedom.
Yeah. And there is a way to, I think there's a misconception that you can't communicate assertively without aggression.
Yes.
And I think that's the hard part for men, especially because we get in trouble a lot, for being too aggressive. And so it's a real dance, like walking on eggshells to try to get that balance right. It's not that easy.
My dad was typical aggressive.
Yeah, so was mine.
And I looked at that as, that's bad. Don't be angry.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
People don't like that. So I went the other way and I suppressed it. And through suppressing it, it became worse, right? Because what you resist will persist and it will come out in different ways. It has to come out, right? And I remember growing up and never wanting to be like him. And it's interesting for anyone watching or listening. Whenever you point and you judge and you say, I never want to be like that, it's going to trigger you and it's going to come up until you accept that that is part of you.
Yeah.
And growing up with an aggressive father, I didn't know how to express anger. And I'll get to this point where I was like, okay, this is triggering me. No, just stay calm. And I get to the point where it was like a kettle, right? It would be like, and then I'd burst. And then I'd have this immediate feeling of regret and shame. I shouldn't have done that. That's not good. People are going to not like me. That's terrible. You don't have your shit under control.
Yep.
And it becomes a vicious cycle. And it's funny you said assertiveness, because assertiveness was one of my values. Because assertiveness means it's not to be aggressive, but what assertiveness means is I have values, you have values, but I'm not going to sacrifice my values for yours.
Yeah.
And all I'm going to do is I'm going to speak up for what is true to me. And that is that I'm not allowing you to treat me like this. And I'm asserting myself and I'm communicating that to you. And it doesn't need to be aggressive or controlling, but it's almost like it's setting this boundary in a way that says, hey, this is the way you treat me from now on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I relate to the father relationship, but mine was the opposite. I was explosive all of the time. And it's kind of...
You were or your father?
I was, he was and I was.
Yeah.
We both, like, I just followed what he did.
Yeah.
And so for me, I don't know that there was suppression. There was just always anger. Like I was just an angry little kid. And so it's kind of strange how we all, as kids, we deal with it in very different ways. There's no, set way that we react to how we're raised and how we're communicated to.
You saw your father act a certain way. He achieved a certain result.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, that must be how I should do it.
Yeah.
So then you follow that path. And then through following that path, you realize that you're like, hang on, it's not healthy. Or it doesn't make me feel good.
Yep.
But it did get results at the start.
Yeah. So this work that you do, emotional intelligence, actually you were telling me before about program that you're launching, 2 Years to Live, which sounds really interesting. We'll talk about that a bit later. We'll circle back to that. But as you mentioned before, emotional intelligence is your thing. And I kind of feel like it's maybe the most important tool in the world that we could all develop. And I don't know that it was really a thing maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Has this work evolved just because humanity is like become like this? Like we've become suppressed, we've become angry. But yeah, like why was this not around 30 years ago?
It's funny, Monty, because emotional intelligence is like, look, I describe it like this. You've got book smarts, which is your IQ. We all get taught lessons in school. We teach how to maths, English, chemistry, biology, physical education. We get taught how to do things, but we don't get taught how to be. We don't get taught how to allow ourselves to feel certain things. And IQ is great to get you where you want to go to, right? But it will get your foot in the door, but it won't lead you to greatness. It won't lead you to fulfillment. It won't lead you to a deeper connected relationship with yourself. So emotional intelligence is the street smart. It's how you view yourself. It's your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's only becoming deeper now because obviously self-development is becoming huge. Yoga, meditation, people are having more breakdowns, more now than ever, especially during the pandemic. And eventually you can't run. So you can keep running and running and running, and eventually it's going to catch up to you, and you get to the point where people are having panic attacks. They're having breakdowns consistently. They're reacting to more things. They feel out of control. They think that their mind and their thoughts are real, right? And we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And what we're doing is we're fusing with the thought. So the thought comes, and then another thought comes, and another thought comes, and another thought comes. And it's almost like you're watching this movie.
We weave it all together.
Yeah. So something will happen to you in the street, and you may hate confrontation, or you may like it. And all of a sudden, like the person drives past and he gives you the bird and he says, F you, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, what? And it triggers you for a second. And in that moment, you're like, I should have done this. I should have done it. And then you start running this whole movie in the background, right? Now, in that moment, it's taking you fully away from like actually what's happening, what's important. And how many times do we do this in our lives where we get pulled by something that happens, a trigger, and then we react because what a trigger is a wound. It's attached to a wound. And how I like to visualize it is picture there's something that's outside of you that stimulates a trigger. I get frazzled, or I get upset or pissed or angry. That trigger is attached to this invisible string on your body, and that's where the wound is. And all that's doing is getting pulled and goes dunk, and that wound is getting open.
Yep.
Now, a wound is just an old, open thing that is there to fester and tell you something. When the moment I get triggered, that's your indication. That's your opportunity to go, what is it in me that I need to heal? Right? So everything is there for a reason. Every emotion is there for a reason. And this is the thing, Monty, is that people don't understand is that your body is telling you way before your mind that there's something wrong. But we don't listen to our body.
Yeah. I think with everything.
Yeah.
I think with everything. Like with our food, with our life, our jobs. I mean, the body knows.
Yeah.
We're just not in tune with it. We're just not aware. And like, I mean, coming back to the triggers, my experience maybe 20 years ago was I was getting triggered all the time, but I didn't have the awareness that they were triggers.
Yeah.
That's the learning. The learning is to realize, oh, that's a trigger. And then have a relationship with that, have a dialogue with that, go, oh, okay, why is that there? What is the wound? But the first part is you've got to realize that the triggers are there.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even realize. They go to the point where like I get triggered and they're like, that person triggered me.
Yeah.
You're the asshole. And it's like.
And that's the easiest thing to do when you're in the moment of being triggered.
Yeah. Because you're like, well, who's to blame?
Yeah.
And the moment we blame, we're giving our power away.
Yep.
The moment you react, you're giving your power away. This is why I say, are you reacting to it or are you responding?
Yep.
So if I pick up a phone and I press on, the phone does what it normally does, right? Now, as human beings, we're not machines, but you're acting like machines, because the moment I react, I'm acting like the machine. I know how to push your button, and you're going to react. And guess who's the best at pushing our buttons? Our mom and dad, our partners, our business partners, our clients. And they all know the closer they get to you, they're going to see those invisible wounds.
Yeah.
And it's our job to recognize and own that and go, okay, this trigger is mine and I get to heal it so that it no longer gets pushed. And if someone does try to push it and I don't react, then who does it go back to? The person that's trying to take my power.
Yep. So, I mean, my journey with dealing with triggers is it's just been a journey of shortening the time span. So get triggered, and then maybe in the past, like, okay, next day I'll realize, okay, yeah, maybe I was triggered. And then own it a day later, right? And then it goes down to a half a day, and then it's like 30 minutes, and then it's like 5 minutes. Okay, I'm triggered. And then now it's like, okay, in the moment, I can recognize I'm triggered. So when you can recognize it in the moment, that's when I feel like you get the power. It doesn't mean you're not going to get triggered. Yeah. But that's when you've got the power.
The other day I was surfing, and I was in Butterballong, and I dropped in, but I didn't see there was a guy on the wave already. And I turned to the right, and he was about 5 or 6 meters away from me. So I was like, I'm fine.
For non-surfers, that means he took the other person's wave.
Yeah. So basically, if there's someone on the wave already, you don't drop in, because it's not nice.
It's disrespectful.
Right? It's disrespectful, right? It is a sign of disrespect. And I thought I saw him, but I was literally already up, and I was like, he was 6 meters away, maybe 5 meters away. He might have been 2. All right, let's admit it. Anyways, I saw him, and then I looked to the left, and I kept on going, right? And he jumped off. He peeled off anyway, so he got off the wave. And then he paddled past me, and he said, "Hey, bro." And I looked, and he goes, "You know, you went to get off when I'm on the wave already." And instantly, right, I'm in full admitting this, I went, "Oh, yeah, I didn't see you there." He goes, "Yeah, but you kept on going anyway after you did." I said, "Yeah." And he swam off, and he shook his head. And in that moment, exactly like you said, I was like, that was interesting. That triggered me. And a trigger can be huge, or it can be something so subtle that could just stunt you in that moment, right? Yeah. And it stunted me, because I was like, why was that confronting? And I asked myself that. Why did I go defensive straight away? What was I trying to defend? In that moment, I was like, I didn't want to be wrong. Where else do I not want to be wrong? Where else do I defend myself? Because wrong is the worst thing you could ever be. That was a great indication for me to go deeper. So in that moment, I was like, I was wrong. What was it that didn't want to admit that? And in the moment, I was going to talk to him, and I couldn't find him. I saw him 2 days later out in the surf. And I said, "Hey." And he goes, "Hey." I go, "You remember me?" And I think he thought I was going to fight him, because people do that shit in the surf, right? Sure. And I said, "I cut you off last couple of days ago." And he goes, "Oh." He goes, "Sorry." I go, "No, I want to apologize." He said, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I did cut you off, and I should have admitted it in that moment, but I didn't." And I said, "I'm a coach, and I teach this." And I said, "What you did was you confronted me, and I wasn't expecting that." And what I thought in that moment was that I didn't want to be wrong, and I just want to apologize and say that I'm sorry for cutting you off, and thank you for calling me out on my shit. And he looked at me
without like overreacting. Like, no, the way you're describing the way he responded, which sounds pretty nice. It was beautiful.
It was
beautiful.
He turned around and said, "Wow." He goes, "I'm sorry." And then he said, "I'm sorry I got angry. I shouldn't get so upset." And I said, "How old are you?" And he said, "I'm 14. He was a big 14-year-old. A 14-year-old. And I was like, this lesson is so beautiful. Yeah. And I was like, this needs to be told, because it's those little things that teach us how to be. And my ego had to get swallowed. and let go of in order to build connection and let go. Like, why are we arguing? What are we getting pissed off about?
That's an amazing conversation with a 14-year-old.
Yeah, he turned around.
Damn, I wish I had those tools when I was 14.
Well, he said to me, he goes, it's crazy how I can, at the start, I was like super angry with you. And now I'm like, hey, what's up? And now he's like, I see him on the wave, like, hey, what's up? And you can turn something that is a negative into a positive.
Yeah, and I think that when you are triggered, the thinking that, okay, well, I need to apologize, is the mind will make up stories of you making yourself wrong. Yeah. But actually, that's where you get the power. Like, by you owning the situation and apologizing, regardless of whether they did something or whether they didn't do something. That's my feeling on it. It's the power's with me now. I own it.
Well, you made a choice. It's really hard though.
Yeah.
It can be really hard to admit when you're wrong when someone's being aggressive with you, right? Because no matter what, even if you are wrong, if someone's tone is off, right? This is emotional intelligence. If someone's tone is off, if my tone was to react back at him the way he reacted at me, how much would he hear?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing. The next day, Tony, like 2 days later when I saw him, I was totally calm. I was like, whatever, I'm not here to try and prove anything. I'm here to let go of that. And then he mirrored the same thing and he got to actually see how he was.
Yeah.
So that's the power of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, man. And I mean, what you're describing there is when we're in these triggered moments, it's like we're in a fear state. And it kind of occurs to me that that's the world we live in now. Like we are fed to be living in this state of fear. Like, I mean, I can go down the rabbit hole on what I think about media and, governments and, people pulling strings as to us living in fear. And I'm sure there are people that have an agenda of putting us in fear, but I'm also more sure that it's just broken systems and broken society, and humanity's evolved to this place where, we're trying to keep up with each other and we're comparing ourselves and we're trying to be greedy and be better than the next person. And to do that, we've got to put them down. And so we're in this constant state of fear. So what you're describing there is this dynamic, I think, that especially in Western societies and USA, you're from USA, right?
No, I'm from Melbourne, actually.
You're from Melbourne, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Good.
Sorry for that. You did tell me you were from Melbourne. For some reason, I thought you were from USA.
Yeah.
But, I mean, from Australia especially, I think it's rife. So in the work that you do in emotional intelligence, is that kind of what you're seeing in the world? Like, what is wrong with the world? Is that what is showing up? I mean, especially in the last, 2020, 21, so much fear, so much agenda to drive fear. Like it's blatantly obvious, some of it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about it, what's the easiest way to control someone? If I was a narcissist, the easiest way to control someone, right? Because I studied a lot of narcissistic behavior because I have a lot of clients that have been in narcissistic relationships. What they would do is confuse the person to the point where they start second guessing themselves.
Just full manipulation.
Yes, because if I can make you second guess yourself, you're not going to be able to think clear. So,
you're making yourself wrong and the other person right.
Yeah. So if I can confuse you or get you to a state of like questioning yourself, then you don't know how to make decisions. Now, fear is what people use to control certain things. And what a narcissist will do is they'll separate you from what you know and people that will actually give you good information or people that are healthy for you, right? And they'll get you to rely directly on them. So whenever you've got anything that is you rely directly on them, it can be dangerous because then I can control your way of thinking. Don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. Just listen to me. Now, if you look at this as a whole and you think of the government and you think of what's happening in the world, like I was saying to you before, like I don't get much into the politics or into what's going on, but I do question myself. How do I feel about this? What do I like about this? What's wrong with this? When they talk about vaccinations and we say everybody has to be vaccinated, I don't agree because I think everybody should have a choice, especially if it's not been proven to really support humanity as a whole. I was watching this documentary the other day, and the guy described it like this. He's like, if everybody ate almonds, and some of the almonds is going to make you sick, or you're allergic to almonds, you shouldn't make everyone eat almonds, right?
Yeah.
But you're making everyone have the vaccine. And what if some people are going to react to that? And that's what's going to happen. But I looked at it like that because that analogy really hit me, because I was like, you're making everyone take the same thing no matter what. And it's a control thing. But what really got me is that anytime you speak about anything, it's censored or it's controlled. Now, why do we have to control it? Why do we have to censor it? If it is the truth, or if people are questioning, why are you being censored? And this is where I think this is where I start to question. I'm like, well, how come I can't express that view?
Yeah.
Or how can't I?
Or
can't
why
ask
can't
that
that
question?
person express that view? Or that person express that view?
Yeah, and that's where I'm starting to be like, well, there's something bigger playing out here. Someone is benefiting from this. And I always have to ask myself, like, I always say question what I'm saying, question what you're hearing, question what you're seeing, question what's being presented to you. What's the intention behind it, right? Yeah. And when you ask that question, then you get to observe it instead of just taking it as blatant truth. Like, freedom is a massive thing. Everybody wants to be free, but we are living in a prison right now, and it's in control. And obviously, how you deal with this pandemic is based on how your relationship is with yourself. So when 2020 hit, how many people freaked out? You can't travel anymore. You can't do this. There's restrictions. You can't go visit your loved ones. All the basic needs that we need, we can't exercise.
Yep.
These are all basic needs that we need to be able to feel good. So what happens to the body? It starts to get into its own shit.
Well, and then also on top of that, I mean, you put a mask on, which is basically a muzzle telling you to shut up and not express yourself. And it's a visual of that as well. It's like,
yeah. So it's interesting you say that, because for me, masks haven't really triggered me. But when I think about masks, like when I go into the supermarket, I wear a mask because I can't get in the supermarket after otherwise, right? When I'm on the streets, I don't wear a mask. The only time I wear a mask is when I want to get food. But other than that, I don't wear a mask. But then I've read things on wearing a mask, on where it's beneficial, where it's not. People are getting sick, even if they are wearing masks. People aren't getting, like, there's no direct correlation that it's doing the job.
And they change their mind every 5 minutes. It's like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear 2 masks, wear 4 masks, back to wearing 1 mask.
Yeah, and washing your hands. And this is also the thing, like my assistant now has COVID. It's the second time having it.
Really?
And yeah, she's had it twice, unfortunately. Yeah. And I said to her the other day, I said, listen, I said, you've got it again because you're ignoring your immune system, because you're ignoring your health. And she said, yeah, it's true. I've been working so much and I've been constantly on the go. And I said, when we get sick, your body's telling you, I need to rest. I need to pay attention. I need to nurture. I need to care for it. It's like having a wound on your leg and it's there, right there. And you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. And you walk through the streets and then dirt gets into it and then it gets more and more shit in it.
You shouldn't be surprised.
And it starts to fester and it starts to rot. Now, this is what we do with our bodies. We get sick or something hits us and we don't pay attention. And then it gets worse. And it gets to a point where it's like, okay, you're not listening to me. I'm going to give you something that makes you get bedridden or makes you stop everything altogether and pay attention to listen.
Yeah.
I always view sickness as a way of reflection. What do I need to reflect on now? How do I need to be with this? And that's what your emotions are telling you. That's what your thoughts are telling you. That it's telling us to be with whatever's coming up. Nurture it.
Rather than trying to suppress it or run away from it or
avoid it.
Yeah. And that's emotional intelligence, isn't it? Like, and that's when that stuff comes up. I mean, because that's how we're kind of raised. We're raised to run away from our emotions and not do it. Nobody teaches us fundamental things. Nobody teaches us how to breathe.
Yeah.
Nobody teaches us how to meditate.
Yeah.
How to, to have emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And you said how to breathe, and everyone's like, well, I know how to breathe, but you actually don't breathe properly. Everybody breathes through their chest. But a real breath, when we're babies, we breathe into our stomachs. And when you breathe into your stomach and you go, and breathe out. That's a proper breath.
Yeah.
But we don't know how to do that. And I only learned that because of yoga. I was a yoga teacher.
And it's related to emotions for sure. Like, I mean, that's how you regulate your emotions and regulate your body and regulate your immune system.
Yeah. And it's all connected. So you think of it like in your body, right? I say, if you're not breathing and you're not allowing flow in your body, what happens is there becomes a blockage, right? So what happens when we strive for perfectionism, or we try to get it right, or we try and force an outcome? Unease, we become stressed. There becomes unease. That unease turns to dis-ease, which turns into disease. And that's where the blockages are, right? So we all have these different blockages in the body. And the more you're aware of your body, the more you're aware of your breath, you're able to release that and acknowledge that, right? Anger is useful, right? Because if I'm pissed or angry at something and I allow that to come out in a healthy way for the right reason, remember, for the right reason, not five conversations, not five conversations before, and let me store it and then let me bring it out now, but for the right reason, then it's communicating to that person, hey, I don't like the way you did that. Yeah. And then I can let that go. Yep. So it's useful. But if we judge an emotion, or if we judge the way we show up in certain ways, like I had a client before call me and say, I've been dating this guy and he's treating me like shit, and I finally let him have it. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, one day he's telling me he wants to be with me, and then he breaks up with me the weekend, like the Friday of the weekend, and then we're at the club and I see him hook up with another girl, and I finally spoke up. And I said, and how did you feel? And she's like, I just couldn't believe that I was acting like this, but I felt she said, I felt crazy. And I said, what made you feel crazy? She's like, I didn't want to be seen as that girl acting like a crazy bitch. And I was like, but how did you feel when you finally got off your chest and you fully expressed to him and you said what you needed to say? She goes, I felt amazing. She goes, but what I realized, Emile, is that I finally saw him for what he was, where he was saying to me all these nice things, but his actions is showing me a totally different thing. And when I finally expressed at the start, I had shame around expressing that, oh, I shouldn't be mean. But what she did in that moment, Monty, was she honored her inner child, and she stuck up for her and put her first, instead of saying, no, don't say anything, don't make anyone else feel uncomfortable. And that is what self-worth is.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, circling back to the vaccine things, because that's my favorite topic. Yeah. But the reason why I'm passionate about it is because I just know 100% that the human body is designed to handle flu itself, to handle COVID, to handle all these things. I'm not against vaccines. I'm against vaccine for COVID. Because I know that the human body is designed to cope with it. Yeah. The statistics are that 99% of people who have been diagnosed with COVID have been deficient in vitamin D. That's one of the major things that weakens our immune system. And that's from unhealthy lifestyle. That's from eating bad foods, not getting exercise, sunlight. There's so many factors, and there's just not enough research around vitamin D. So that's what kind of gets me. But I'm same like you, I'm just pro-choice. If people do the research and they've made an informed decision for themselves, okay, well, I've looked at both sides and I'm choosing to take the vaccine, great, well, that's your choice. The thing that scares me about the whole vaccine situation is when people say, well, let me just get the vaccine so I can get back to life, without making an informed decision. Yeah. And this is why like the free donut for showing your vaccine passport, like, I mean, that fucks with me, because it's like, that's a manipulation to not let people make an informed choice for themselves.
That was super interesting when I saw that. Yeah. Because you got to think, who's making decisions to be like, it's Krispy Kreme's. I used to love Krispy Kreme's, but at the same time, like, it's so unhealthy that people don't even value their health, right? And it's like, who's that going to appeal to? It's going to appeal to the person that is not disciplined, doesn't value health, is a sheep that just follows what they hear. And it's on a broad scale, like people celebrating it. Look, I got my free Krispy Kreme.
Yeah.
It's
Taking selfies with the donut.
It's $1. Like, it just shows sometimes the stupidity of people of going, I'm going to get this free thing if I get this.
Yeah.
So what do you value, right? Because it's so important to question. And like I said to you before, question everything. Question why they're doing this. Why am I getting this for free? What's the payoff for this? I've heard things about them saying, like you said before, just take the vaccine so things can go back to normal. We're going to open up travel. But even if you take the vaccine, you still got to wear a mask. You still got to social distance.
And people can still get COVID.
And I don't get how that works then, because I'm like, well, why am I taking it then?
Yeah.
So I do believe, it does scare me in a way where it's like, I asked my mum was a nurse for like 30, 40 years. She's a psychologist. I said, are you going to take the vaccine? And they watch the news.
Yeah.
Like, they religiously watch the news.
The mainstream news.
And they say this stuff to me. And my sister's very much, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing that. And they have their little fights.
Yeah.
But the difference is I don't put my opinion on my parents. I don't put my opinion on my sister. I voice my own opinion.
Yep.
And that's it. And I don't need you to follow it, but this is what I'm going to do. And I said to my mom, I said, you've got to look at the bigger picture. And I said, you can take the vaccine, but just don't take it. Be the first one to take it. I said, just see what happens. I said, if that means that you can't travel or you can't do anything or you can't think, I said, you need to check in, but make sure, let 1 million people do it first. Don't be the first ones to do it. Don't be the guinea pig. And I say that because it's like, they're still testing things.
Yeah.
They're still seeing what's happening. So for me, it's like, it is unfortunate that this is going on in the world. We can always wish that it wasn't happening, but it is. Excuse me. So we have to be present with what is actually being presented to us. And I think in the moment, I need to decide in the moment what I need to do. Not think 5 steps ahead, because this is where anxious and panic attacks can happen. And I think so many of us will get into that stage of what's going to happen. And it's like, you deal with what's happening now. And then you know to take the next step. And then you know to take the next step. But I think a lot of people are also waking up and questioning.
Yeah. That's the good thing that I'm loving is like, people that I knew before were, I've always been weird. I always thought weird. I've never been vaccinated once in my whole life.
Ever?
Ever. I'm 43 years old.
Wow.
And I think the reason is because there was if you look at when vaccines really got pushed into schools in Australia, it was 1989. And I think it's a similar kind of thing in the USA. 1989 is when there was this massive push. And I think I just kind of skipped under that. And I was speaking to my mum about a year ago because I had this really strange memory of being in school. And I think in grade 6, I would have been like 11 maybe. And I remember all the class going to get vaccinated. And I couldn't remember if I got vaccinated or not, but I remember feeling lonely. That's my memory, my memory is the feeling of being lonely.
Yeah.
And what my mum told me was, at that age, she gave me the choice. She said, if you don't want to take it, don't take it. If you want to take it, take it. And that's where, and then I realized that feeling of being alone was, I was somewhere else on my own while everybody else was getting vaccinated.
Wow.
And somehow I was able to make that choice for myself to not follow
Everybody else.
25 other people and me to go on my own and not be vaccinated. It's like, where did I get that from? That's
you started
incredible.
this a long time ago then.
Yeah, exactly. But it's never kind of been an issue until recently. But yeah, it's a weird world because I'm not against vaccines for the right thing.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I just think we all should have a choice to be able to go, I want this in my body or not.
Yeah. So what do you think are the problems in the world that we are dealing with that are most important that humanity needs to really move through and do the work on?
Mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, it's become a buzzword, but it's something that is getting more and more put in our faces and prevalent. And I think people are having more breakdowns now than more than ever. And it's because of the restrictions. It's because they can't just do what they want. And I think...
You mean just from this last, 2020, 21
yeah, for
period?
the past year, the moment the world shut down, you can't just do what you want to do. And when you can't do what you want to do, I mean, we've been very lucky in Bali. I haven't experienced a lockdown. I think it was the first 3 months we were here.
Yeah.
Of March that the beaches were closed.
Yeah, the beaches were closed for like a month or something.
Yeah, which is stupid because I'm like, I remember seeing people spray the sand.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is how uneducated we were about this. They were spraying our tires on the bike and like just things like that where I was like, they're following it because they've been told, right?
Yeah.
And I think what people need to understand is that your relationship with yourself is the most important thing you can work on, is the most vital relationship you're going to have. Because when everybody leaves or when things don't go the way you want, guess who you're stuck with?
Yeah.
That little voice inside. So when you build that resilience and you connect to that deeper part of yourself and you not just, when people go, how do you build a relationship? It's like we're made up of light, we're made up of dark, right? The dark is the shadow, the side that you don't value, the side that you don't want to show people, the side that you're embarrassed about, the side that you have shame about. The moment you embrace that part and you start to nurture that, that's those wounds that you start to heal. And I think when you sit with yourself, and I'd like to do meditation daily, and I sit with myself and allow whatever's to come up to come up. And I also acknowledge myself after I finish it, because that's me acknowledging my inner child. And I think it's so important to build that relationship with that inner child because so many of us have let go of that inner child because of trauma, because of not feeling that we can't get love this way. And if I honor that or speak up about that, then my parents won't love me or accept me in the way, or my partner won't love me in that way, and when we build that relationship together, the dark and the light, when it comes together, that's when we're whole. That's when we feel complete. And I think when we cultivate that relationship on a daily basis, not on, I'm just going to do this once a week for myself, but daily. What are you doing daily for yourself? How are you filling your cup up daily? What is it that you've done for yourself today? How have you acknowledged yourself? Right? So many of us wait for the big thing to come and arrive or achieve something before we can acknowledge it. And I think when you build that relationship, then you start to see the world in a different space. It stops showing up as hard. It stops showing up as, oh my God, I wish this stopped happening to me. And you start to see it for what it is. And then you see your perception shifts. And when that happens, it becomes really interesting.
I think that what occurs to me as you say that is the hard part about building a relationship with yourself is that in the start, it seems selfish, right?
Yeah,
it's like we kind of walk through life thinking that we need to do things for other people.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just an unconscious distraction to not want to do the work for ourselves, but it feels selfish.
Where did you learn that?
I don't know where I learned that, but
well, let's break it down. Who did you see doing things for other people?
Oh, my mum for sure.
See?
My mum.
So we always learn it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So if your mum was that person that sacrificed herself for her kids,
Yeah, she just gave herself to everybody else.
Yep. And then you see that and you go, oh, that's how I need to be.
Yeah.
So I was the same. I was this people pleaser, and I saw it from my mother. And my mother would always do things for everybody else, would break her back, was always the kind, loving one. And I was like, that must mean love.
Yeah.
That's how we love. So I go out and I go be the nice guy and I go and do things for everybody else. And when I first started, like, we heard of it, like the nice guys finish last, right?
Yeah.
Growing up, I was this 18, 19-year-old. I was working in the clubs. And I remember, Monty, working in the clubs when I first started promoting, and I was shy. I wasn't shy. I was just not confident. And working in the clubs as a promoter really got me out of my comfort zone. And I remember you know, I was meeting a lot of girls and people are coming up to me and you know, I felt really confident and popular and shit. And I'd get a girl and then I'd be this super nice guy and I'd do everything. And the girl kept leaving or abandoning or being like, it's too nice. And I was like, what the fuck? How do I change this? And it got to a point where I was fed up. I was like, you know what? No more Mr. Nice Guy. And it was wrong because I did that because I didn't want to get abandoned. So what I did was I would not care or act like I didn't care.
You went full opposite.
Yeah. Act like I didn't care. And then they'll come more.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't get this. I don't understand. I become an asshole and they want more of it.
Yeah.
Right. And it was because I was trying to counteract the behavior before, which was the people pleaser in me. That was always like wanting to give you stuff, but I was only being a people pleaser because I wanted you to like me or love me.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to accept me. And what people pleasing does, and what we do as human beings, going back to your question of like self-help is selfish, it's not. Because until you help yourself, until you flow with yourself, until you connect to yourself and fill your own cup to the point where it overflows, you're not going to be able to really give with the unattachment of receiving something back.
Yeah.
You know, on the airplane, the oxygen mask comes down and they say, please put this mask on yourself before helping anybody else, because you can't help anybody else if you've got no oxygen to breathe. And it's the same thing. You can't support anyone or really come from a place of genuine service if your cup is empty.
Yeah.
So we always learn it from somewhere, and this is why it's selfish, right? It's only selfish if you keep filling up your own cup and taking from people, but not then impacting more people or giving that gift.
Yeah. So I think we all have these unconscious personality traits, you know, like yours is a people pleaser. Mine was, I was very arrogant. Like I was really arrogant, but I was confident in what I did. So it worked for me, right? And that confidence, but I didn't really get to see how arrogant I was. And then when I was like 29 or 30, I did landmark education.
I did it too. Familiar. That was my first one.
And I really got to see that arrogance. I was like, fuck, that's scary. But what happened was I dropped it. Like I just dropped it completely. But I had no confidence. Had no confidence for about 6 months. I couldn't make sales. I couldn't talk to girls. I couldn't do anything for 6 months. I was lost.
So you said, because you thought that arrogance was confidence.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, that's bad. Don't do that.
Exactly. So I parked it. Yeah. Well, no, my ego got such a shock that it's like, I just don't want to be that anymore.
Yeah.
But what happened was about 6 months later, I was doing the advanced course, and one of the facilitators or leaders shared with me, said, you can be that, but you own it instead of it owning you. So that arrogance just owned me and I wasn't aware of it. But now that I was aware of it, it's like, okay, well, no, I can use that. But I can use it in a way, I can use that confidence in a way that I control it, I own it. So then I'm bringing that confidence without needing to be arrogant. And that's like what you're sharing about the people pleasing is, it's like you went full the other side.
Yeah.
But when you can realize that, oh no, I can actually be that. There's a way to be that where I own it and it doesn't own me. And then you get this beautiful kind of merging between those both sides. And then you show up in a congruent way. Yeah.
It's interesting how you said, you know, the arrogance, as soon as I lost everything, confidence, everything, because it's funny when you break down arrogance and what is it? It's something where it's like, look at me, I can show you, blah, 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 blah.
I was like, I was proving to the world, man. I was like, yeah. And
then you've got what actual confidence is. Confidence is not in your face. Yeah. It's not boisterous. It's not loud. It's not, here, I'm here, right? Confidence has a subtle, this subtle feeling to it. Like
it doesn't even need to have a voice.
Yeah, you can see someone walk in and they're confident, and you can just see by their energy.
Yeah.
And you're like, that person's confident. The way they walk, the way they talk, their shoulders back, the way they handshake, the way they make eye contact. And you can feel it in that moment. And I think everybody wants confidence, but what people don't realize is that underneath the confidence, right? If I was to go, this is confidence, what's actually underneath here is trust. Because when I fully trust myself, I become confident in how I show up, and I don't need to express it, but I can if I want.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's well said. Back to you mentioned, you said mental health is, one of the biggest things that we need to work through and solve. How much of mental health is a symptom of a society that just values material wealth and getting things and comparing ourselves and trying to be better and bigger, and because it's a never-ending game. Like, I mean, how do you win? How can you win at that game? And do you think it is the root cause of a lot of mental illness?
I mean, when you see social media these days and you see the YouTube stars and influencers, and a pure example of that is, I watched the fight on the weekend. Did you watch it? Jake Paul. Ben Askren.
I saw the highlights. I didn't watch the fight.
You saved yourself a lot of time. I was angry at myself. That I watched something that I don't even care about.
Yeah.
And I wasted that time. I literally was pissed. I was like, what am I doing? I'm watching people that I like, this dude, I don't even value what he does or brings to the world. And I spent time being with it. And I think what you're saying is, when we compare, we constantly idolize, we put people on pedestals, we look for people to give us and feed us from outside, and constantly looking for that that validation through social media, through likes, through, oh, they shared my stuff, or look at me. And I think it becomes a very, like a trap, like the happiness trap. When I have this, I'm going to be this. And the thing that is dangerous is that when we place all our values on something outside of us, it can get taken away in that moment. And you can feel like nothing, right? Like before, you're like, if Jake Paul didn't have his money and his bodyguards, who would he be? The way he acts on the screen is purely coming, like, he's called problem child. Purely childish, not childlike. Because childlike is a child that is just doing what they want to do and they're having fun. They don't care who's looking. Childish is, I'm throwing a tantrum. Look at me. Pay attention to me. Look, I'm doing this, right? And I think what we need to stop doing is focusing on status, on the material. And don't get me wrong, I love material things. I love having nice clothes. I love being comfortable. But I also don't make that something that changes the way I feel about myself. I was a model for 12 years. Like, I traveled all around the world. I walked on stages from Jean-Paul Gaultier to Gucci to Versace. I did New York Fashion Week. I was on major billboards. I saw it. I was in it. People were telling me, oh my God, you're amazing. It looks great. I had the best body. I was ripped. I was dating models all around the world. I was getting into nightclubs and we're popping bottles with like celebrities, and I got to see that side, and it didn't make me any happier.
Yeah.
It didn't fulfill me. And it got to a point where I went from country to country. I lived in Hong Kong. I lived in New York. I was in LA. I was in Barcelona. I was in Germany. I was in Italy. And it's the same shit. We go to a different country. They celebrate. All the models get treated really good. They come to our restaurant. We get free meals because it looks good. But it was the most shallow conversations that I had. There was no depth. And after a while, New York was one of my last stops before I stopped modeling. I remember sitting at the table, and I'm 38 now. I was, I think, 32 at the time when I was there. No, 30, sorry. And I remember sitting there, and I'm sitting with models that are like 20, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm just from here and from there, and all over the world. And no one's really eating, no one's really talking. And I'm like, this is so boring. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? And that my voice, my gut was telling me like, Emile, this isn't fulfilling you. But I kept on going.
When you were in that period of your life, like in hindsight now, can you reflect on that and say that you were trapped in that at all? Or did you always have that voice? Did you always have something kind of going, this is only for a short amount of time and this is not for me and I can see the fakeness? And
it did, but that's the temptation, right? When it gets put in front of you. your real test is when it gets presented and you have a choice to take it or not. The instant gratification, the instant hit. And I did get to New York, and sorry, I was younger in New York. I was like 28 when I got to New York. But I remember getting there going, and I was already starting to get into really get into my self-development, really get into like, go deeper with myself. And I remember being in New York, and I was invited to another party. Like Jay-Z was on the next table, and like we're popping bottles, and I'm sitting there going, I'm not really into this. And it was a test.
Yeah, massive test.
Massive test, because I was like, wow, this is new. But I'm like, it's the same shit. I was in Hong Kong, we were doing the same thing there. So we get to this part where I'm like, my gut was saying, okay, Emile, just, you're here to work, get out, whatever. I get caught up, meet a few girls. All of a sudden, I'm stuck in the same rut. I'm going out, I'm partying, I'm having fun. You know, I'm 28. It's New York. It wasn't until, it's pretty funny how I say this. I watched, I was in my apartment on the Hudson River, and I'm watching this movie, and it was Eat, Pray, Love. And Julia Roberts has had a breakdown. I don't know if you've seen it, but she has a breakdown. And she says,
this is like the third conversation we've had on this podcast about
Really?
Eat, Pray, Love, about men watching Eat, Pray, Love.
Really?
No shit.
Yeah. So so I'm sitting there going, watching her go through her shit, and she's literally reflecting. She's like, I'm not happy in life. And she looks out her window, and she's looking at the view of the Hudson River. And I look out, it's exactly the same view that I have. And I look and I go, I know where that is. And like, I can see the buildings. And I look at the screen, and I'm like, it's trippy. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Does the sign get any clearer?
Yeah. And I literally was like, what am I doing? And I'm like, I've gone from LA. I struggled in LA. It was really hard. It was great because it showed me that I could get through hard times, but it also got me to question why I'm here. And I'm in New York, and I'm like starting to work really well, and it's working better for me, but I'm still busting my ass. I'm working catering jobs on the side. I'm working for a company called Beautiful Bartenders, where I'm serving celebrities and shit. The things that people don't see in the background, like, oh yeah, Emile's modeling in New York. It looks amazing. Yeah, fancy. You don't see what's all happening in the background. And this is the same thing with celebrities that are getting celebrated now. These YouTube stars that are making tons of money, they're not happy, right? If you were, the happier you were, you wouldn't have the desire to show off how much money I have, to show off all the things I have, right? Because at the end of the day, they're so addicted to their phones and so addicted to the likes that they literally are having panic attacks, breakdowns. Their mental health is like off the charts. This is why people are taking drugs and overdosing and shit. They don't want to feel it anymore. And it had to happen to me as well. I literally was in New York. I was like, I'm going to go to India. And I ended up going to India. I was meant to be there for 3 months. I ended up staying 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got an agency there, and one of my friends who's was a big model in New York.
Actually, you know what? One of the other stories of the Eat, Pray, Love, they went to India as well.
They did. I know. I think I did the rounds. Where was the third place? Italy. I haven't done that yet. So I ended up going to India. I was only meant to be there 3 months because I was already into yoga, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go there. I'll go and do yoga and just kind of ground myself. So I just fired 2 of my agents in one day, my LA agent and my New York agent. And I was like, I just signed with one of the top agencies in the world, Wilhelmina, and they were redoing my whole visa and everything, and they were going to sponsor me for another 3 years. I said, just before I sign or you get the paperwork done, I need to do a trip to India. So I went for 3 months. They said, yeah, cool, but just make sure you don't go in an ashram and grow a beard and not come back. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did, except for the beard, because I can't grow one. Okay, so I went to India, ended up loving it, and the most profound experiences, India taught me how to become simple again, how to focus on gratitude. And I saw kids in the street that didn't have anything, and I would come down from my apartment. I was staying in a modeler's apartment at the time. And I remember coming down and going to the gym, and I used to go through this slum, and these kids would be like, "Uncle, uncle," and they kick the ball to me, and I kick it back, and they're like, "Can I have a chocolate?" And I'll give them a chocolate or stuff. And every day they'd see me and they'd give me 5, and I was like, wow, they're happy,
Yeah.
but they have nothing.
Yeah.
And it really like shook me, because I was like, wow, I've been in the States focusing on all the things I don't have. When I get famous, when I have more money, when I just, I'm chasing it and chasing it, but I'm chasing it from the wrong place. I'm chasing it from desperation.
Yeah.
I'm chasing it from, I need this to happen. Otherwise I'm not going to feel fulfilled. And that's where it hit me, because my friend was a Bollywood star, and we ended up living together there, and she's massive in Bollywood. And I'm telling you, she's the most unhappy she's been. And I'm seeing two sides, and I'm like, I see the slums, and I see people living on the streets, and they're sleeping on the streets, but they're sleeping peacefully. And then I see people that are celebrities that are massive that can't sleep without pills. So what is richness?
Yeah.
And it really hit me. India is one of those places that slaps you in the face with the simplicity and energy of that place, where it gets you to reflect and go, how am I playing a part in this? And I went and started doing yoga. I ended up doing my yoga teacher training. And I ended up going to the Leh Ladakh, which is like the mountains. It's huge. It's like the Himalayas, and the air is so thin. It's like 14,000 feet up. Like you can't run 5 meters without going. And I went there for 2 weeks, and I ended up doing a course in Vipassana, where it's a silent meditation with a monk. And I asked myself these hard questions, and I said, what do I want? What sparks? What lights me up? I've done modeling for about 10 years now, 11 years. Do I want to go back to New York? Is that what I really want? Am I really fulfilled? Does this light me up? I did say to myself, when I get to New York, if that will be my last stop. Now, I went there and I experienced it, and nothing really changed for me. I wasn't happier. And I ended up not going back to New York. My visa, which is more interesting, the paperwork for my visa was sent off, right? I had to get all my tears, like all the magazines that I've been in. Like I had to, because to get a certain visa, you had to have a certain amount of tears, right? And be in a certain amount of magazines. It was like something like 50 or 60 tears. So they sent that all off. It didn't arrive on time. And my agency calls me and is like, Emile, we've missed the cutoff date. Don't worry, we're going to reapply. And I came out of Vipassana and I said, don't reapply. They said, what do you mean? And I said, it wasn't meant to come. If it was meant to be on time, it would have been. We sent it like a month in advance, and it didn't arrive. I said, I'm not meant to come back. And I didn't go back to New York, and I left my shit there. So I ended up staying in India for another year. And then after being in India and coming back to myself and connecting to myself and building and cultivating that relationship with doing yoga, meditation, just simple things. Like I would go and do a job. I was modeling in India. I would go and do a job. And if I hadn't been there before to a certain part of the country, I would stay for a week by myself, travel, reflect. I rode a motorcycle, I rode an Enfield. And then I'll go back and I'll do another job. And I traveled all over. And then I went back after a year. I went back to Australia. And this is the funny thing. This is a test. It's always going to present itself again to see if you really want it. I went back to Sydney and I got an agency there, and I started working more than I'd ever worked before in my life. Everything that I've always wanted just happened. I was making more money, Monty, then than I ever made in modeling. I had like 4 or 5 days off that year. And I'm telling you, to the point where I was like 4 or 5 days a week, I'm shooting. So the minimum amount I was making in a day was like something like $800. Money's coming in. I'm training. I'm like the best shape I've ever been, because I knew that I spotted an opportunity. Like the online community was happening, like all the shoots were online, like ASOS and all that kind of stuff. And David Jones was online all of a sudden. And I just happened to be lucky enough to be a 32 waist and a medium top, but I was ripped. So I could wear suits, but I can wear underwear, and I was very versatile. Luck. Because if my hips were a little bit bigger, I wouldn't fit the pants. And I was just luck. And I worked my ass off. But you know what I was doing? Again, I was making the money, which I thought was going to bring me happiness. I became so good at it because I was like, if I can get this and make this easy for them, this was my train of thought, make the job so easy for the client, they don't need to think. And I'm glad I took that work ethic with me, because I got hired over and over again. And then clients started like, are you working tomorrow? I'm like, call my agent. Okay, we need to book you for next week. I'm like, make sure you call that because I think I'm booked for that. It's a great place to be in.
Yeah.
But I ended up working like a Trojan horse. Like I was literally like a glorified factory worker, putting on clothes, taking them off, boom, boom, boom. That's all it was. And although it looked good because I was making the money and I'm a model, I felt so unfulfilled and so bored and so spiritually bankrupt.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was like, I did it again. I fell back into the trap. And I said after New York, I'm going to do it. And I ignored it because I wanted the money.
Yeah.
And I thought the money was going to give me the significance and the feeling that fills that gap. And it didn't give me it didn't feel anything. Yeah. So I went back to India for another 14 months. And then when I went back to India, I just started going back into my coaching and started going back to my learning, and ended up doing my yoga teacher training. And that's where I think it stopped me comparing and looking for the next biggest thing to fill that void.
Great journey, man.
Wow.
Do you think it's possible to unite that fulfillment and spiritually happy with financial wealth?
Yeah, I don't think money is a bad thing. I think money is a great thing if you can use it in alignment with your values. I think if you can make money doing what you love and then show other people how to do the same thing, it can be amazing. If you can teach people how to impact other people and contribute, it can be used in such a way that can leave you feeling fulfilled, right? I think we connect money to, if I make a lot of money, then that means someone else has got to suffer, or that, you know, and I think money can be used, and I have this conversation with my clients, and some, like, I have a lot of high-end clients that are making a lot of money, but they're unfulfilled. And what we have to do is redirect where they're focusing on and how they can contribute back, and also how that can align with their values versus I'm just making money and it's not going anywhere, or it's not supporting anyone, or it's not growing for anyone.
So they're doing it for safety and security, and they're trying to hoard their money and
safety, security, and ego, status, right? And then that's where the unfulfillment shows up, right? Because before, what you were saying is like, I was arrogant. You're saying, you know, I was competitive. You know, what do we get when we win? We get praise, we get significance, we get people attention. And so we get addicted to that feeling of getting that. And what happens when it gets taken away? All of a sudden, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm about. And this is what happens when I coach high achievers, is that they get to a point where they're like, why am I doing this? I'm disconnected from my family. I don't feel connected to anybody. I'm lonely, but I have an entourage. And this is what people don't realize or don't see when they see these people that are celebrated on stage, is that they don't see what's happening in the background. And going back to why we do what we do, it's like when you align yourself fully with the value and you go, okay, this lights me up. Why does it light me up? Right? And then you teach people how to do the same thing. There's nothing more gratifying than seeing people win and create a life of their dreams, but then share it.
Yeah, and the mastery comes through the teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple more questions for you. So you were telling me before about your program, the 2 years to live, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, because that sounds super interesting. Like, what's the background to that?
So 2 years to live was based on a client of mine that was told she had 2 years to live. Her name's Diana Burgess.
Because of a health condition, or?
Yeah. So she was told by doctors that she had a rare heart condition and that she had to have emergency surgery. And if she went through with the surgery, she was going to have a 40% chance of surviving. And if she survived, she was given 2 years to live. Now, the crazy thing is that she was a marathon runner. She wasn't unhealthy. She wasn't sitting on the couch drinking. Like, she ran marathons. And what's crazy about this story is that when she went and had surgery, like she started gathering her things, she had to write a will. Now imagine you get told you got 2 years to live.
How old was she at the time?
She was, I think she's 60 now. I think she was 50. But
Yeah,
she wasn't young, but she wasn't, it's not old.
No, it's not.
It's not. When you think about it, it's like when you get told you've got a certain amount to live, something clicks.
Yeah.
And it clicked in my mind straight away. I was like, holy shit, what would I do? What would I do if I got told got 2 years to live? I was like, I would let go of this story. I would allow myself to be more expressive. I would stop caring what people think. I would put myself out there more. I would express to my loved ones more.
Wouldn't engage in any drama.
Yeah, you would stop holding on to resentment and past pain. And you would go out and you would just want to just spread it, and be the best version of yourself and not wait, right?
Yeah.
And so many of us do, we wait versus create. So I created this 30-day challenge, and the reason why I did a 30-day challenge is because you don't need long to make a choice. You need to make a choice today. And this course is about taking action. So I break it down into 5 categories, right? And we break down your values and how you make decisions, because that's your internal compass. And if you don't know what your values are, you don't know your worth, you don't know how to set boundaries, you don't know how to build relationships, and you will have less energy. The second one we go into is your fears and beliefs. What is your fear? What is your stories that you're holding on to that are disempowering you? What are the beliefs that are holding you back? And how do we create new ones? Then we go into your habits and consistency, because when you understand what you do daily is actually impacting how you feel in the future, if you just break down what your daily habits are, that's your little system, right? And James Clear says it great. He says, we don't fall to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems.
Yeah.
And it's basically telling you that, what's your system?
Yeah.
Right? If you want to achieve A, B, and C, what is the system that you're going to create to get there? Because if you're acting like this way and behaving like this, and that's your system, there's no way you're going to reach that even though you have the same goal.
Yeah.
So habits they're your systems, and then we go into your money mindset. And how many of us are attached to money, or money makes us feel a certain way, right? So when I look at money, I look at it, it's like, imagine that money is a person. How am I treating her? How am I treating him? Am I holding on to him? Am I allowing him to come and go? Am I valuing him? Do I know how money works?
Am I pushing them away?
Yeah. Am I, and it's funny because people will be like, well, I want money, but you're not open to receiving it, right? And you're not open to receiving it because sometimes when I look at it as money as an energy, and money will only amplify what's already there, right? Yeah. So if you're
a dick, you're going to be more of a dick.
You'll be a bigger dick and it'll show up. And this is why I think it's really important to talk about money, but in a way where it's like, why do I want to make more money? What do I want to do with it? Who do I want to impact with it? What would I change in the world if I had more money? And this is why I think a lot of us think that if I make more money, or that's bad, or don't make too much money because that's greedy. And that will stop us subconsciously from creating that. But if you know why you're doing it, and you don't have shame or guilt around making it, and you impact more people with it, then why not have more of it?
Yep. And
the fifth one is purpose. So why do we do what we do, and getting clarity about why you're here, because you don't have time. She was told she had 2 years to live. A year later, she was running a marathon after her first surgery. Now she's been living 10 years now.
Yeah.
But she still lives every day like this could be it. And I'm telling you right now, she wasn't living until she got told that she had 2 years to live.
Yeah, I've heard this over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So, yeah, I encourage people to go check it out. So how can people find you? Instagram?
Yeah, so come to my website, which is www.emilesteenveld.com, or my Instagram.
Yep, we'll make sure everyone's got the links in the show notes and can find you. So
yeah, and we're starting at May 12th.
Yep, cool, man, awesome. One final question, but before I do that, man, just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
It's really important stuff, and the way that you communicate and present yourself is you're very grounded and humble.
Thank you.
and it's appreciated. So
Thank you. I'll happily receive that.
good stuff, man. So final question, which I ask everybody, is if you had the one-time superpower of mental telepathy and you could share a message with all 7.8 billion people in the world, or whatever the number is, one short, impactful message, what would that be?
It would say, I would say take a breath, reflect, connect, and let be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
It always comes back to your breath. And if we can all just breathe and reflect and connect.
And surrendering to the moment.
Yeah, and connect to the breath, everything dissipates.
Yeah.
It doesn't, your worries are gone. It's like, it really is. It's like the moment you're more present you are with yourself, and the more you make time to be present, the less stress, the less anxiety, the less disease, the less fights we have, the better decisions we make. And that's what it comes down to.
And this comes back to the daily habits that you're talking about. What are you doing daily? What are you doing today?
Yeah.
Because our tendency is we engage in tools or strategies when we're broken, or when it's too hard, or when something big happens.
And we put so much pressure on ourselves that we fuck it up. Like you think about it, like even like we've got deadlines coming up, and I'm leaving in 2 weeks. In my head, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta do this, And I'm like, Emile, moment by moment. And I have to remind myself, and I do the practice.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for like 15 years. I still have to do the practice.
Yeah.
And I still have to talk to myself nicely. And I still have to make sure I'm doing the work. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that for anyone watching needs to understand, is that you may do one course, cool. You may read a book, cool. But until you're embodying it, until you're practicing it daily, it won't make a difference to you.
Yeah, I mean, my thing to keep myself present is obviously there's my rituals and practices and meditation every day and movement every day. But the way I approach my work is I just focus on 3 things I've got to do today. I mean, I've got a massive list of things I could do. I've got like 7 businesses, and I'm doing projects and I've got all sorts of things. And if I just looked at the whole list of everything that's got to be done, I'd just be like, fuck that, I'm staying in bed.
Yeah,
so it's just, I got
overwhelm will overtake your body.
Yeah. What's the 3 biggest things I can work on? What's the top of the list, the most important? And I'm just going to focus on that. That's it. And it keeps me present to, what I need to get done. Yeah.
That's good. I had to do the same thing, because otherwise my focus is like pew pew pew.
Yeah, that's my natural tendency.
Yeah.
So guys, make sure you go check out Emile. Emile, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Great
Pleasure.
conversation. And guys, see you next time. Back down the rabbit hole.